You can solve a calculus problem but then freeze up when it's time to ask for a raise. You can know how to write an essay but not know how to say no without feeling guilty for a week straight. It makes you feel like you're failing at the simple stuff even though you know you're not dumb. And the truth is that school taught you how to pass the damn test but not really how to live your life. It's like they gave you a powerful PC but just didn't even install Windows onto it. And that's not necessarily on you. The problem is now is that we have a epidemic going on of people poverty maxing, retard maxing, looks maxing. And obviously school didn't teach us how to handle this type of shit. And for years, I felt like I was running on that exact broken system, completely lost and totally cooked. So today I'm giving you the missing manual, the patch if you will. These are the 5 foundational skills that let me build a future that I actually control. This isn't theory, this is the stuff that you can start using this week to make your money, your relationships, and your own self-respect way less chaotic. It's simple, but it works. So alright, let's start with the one that keeps us up at night, which is money. You open your banking app and take a quick glance at the number and your stomach just drops. Financial literacy is simply knowing what's coming in and what's going out and just making sure you're the one that's in charge of it. And school will teach you math, but not how to build a budget that actually works. And that definitely wasn't an accident. I know this is basic advice, but what should be common knowledge doesn't seem to be very common anymore. And there's plenty of statistics to back that up. There was a study from the TIAA Institute that found that on average, people can only answer about half of the basic financial questions correctly. And it's no secret, we live in a system that isn't designed to make you feel confident with your money. So we kind of just got to create that confidence for ourselves. Before I understood this, like my finances were a disaster, and it was genuinely impressive how fast I could burn through money, especially when I was still using. There was literally no concept of financial literacy in my cooked brain. I worked way too hard to just stay broke, and what's crazy is my turning point was embarrassingly simple. After I uncooked myself, I got brutally honest with my situation, sat down and tracked every single dollar for 1 month. That's it. And I saw the numbers in black and white and how much was being wasted on things that first I don't even remember buying, and second, stuff that brought me literally zero purpose. And that became the wake-up call I personally needed. And it was even at a point where my income was solid and I still didn't have shit to show for it, which there's simply no excuse for. Mastering your money isn't about being a Wall Street genius or a financial advisor or some shit. First, you can just create a dead simple budget. Just know your income and your fixed costs and understand how credit and debt work. Simple stuff. Because having a good credit score is a power tool and bad debt is equivalent to a prison. So if you can't, start building good credit now. This is basic education, but it is education we have to learn on our own because the school system was more focused on me learning Shakespeare or ancient Romans. So I'm honestly so blessed that I didn't have any established credit when I was still using, because I would for sure still be poverty maxing till this day and kicking myself in the ass for it. I mainly just use my credit cards for bills and then pay them off immediately. Like I don't even like to play with that shit if I don't have to, you know? And if you have bad credit, that's okay. You mainly just want to get rid of that debt above all else. Simple stuff. And then once you're done with poverty maxing and you get a little momentum going, automate your savings. Set up a transfer for the day that you get paid, even if it's just 20 bucks. Because it's not even about the money at first. Like you're paying yourself first, and this is one of the best habits you can build for your future self. And it is a massive mindset shift when you have an actual emergency fund, because your brain is no longer in survival mode, wondering how the hell am I going to pay my bills this month? And then you just build from there. And that's where you can start taking investing seriously. And in my opinion, index funds and Roth IRA is the one guarantee that you won't be poverty maxing for the rest of your life, even if somehow everything else fails. We've all seen how some millennials and Gen X people have turned out, like the guy in his 50s still working in retail with no savings to show for it. And like I remember at my first couple jobs in fast food or retail, seeing those types of people and the misery they projected onto others. I'm not trying to be mean or anything. These are just examples we've all seen in our lives, and having basic knowledge and habits behind financial literacy can just outright prevent us from ever being in that position. So I know that was the most basic advice ever, but it's simple and extremely effective, and that's why I say it. It should be common knowledge, but it doesn't seem to be very common nowadays. So the second skill is the one we're often told to just ignore, especially for us men, which is handling your own emotions. So you can get a frustrating text or a minor setback and it throws off your entire day. You just say like, I'm fine, but the chances are that you're not fine and you're bottling it up. And I think we've all done this. Emotional regulation isn't about becoming a robot. It's about learning how to respond with your head instead of just reacting with your gut. So uncontrolled emotion doesn't go away. It just festers and it comes out as misplaced anger, anxiety, or an impulsive decision you end up regretting an hour later. I used to have a short fuse, and a small problem for me would feel like a catastrophe, and I would let my mood run my day. And people pick up on that too. And if someone got in the way of my using back then, that relationship was over with. Simple as that. I've burnt so many bridges back then from not regulating my emotions, and like I've said, there's people that are still mad at me 3 years later for some of the stuff I've done, and I've ruined good opportunities and completely disregarded a lot of that shit back then. Like, I was rage baiting before we even knew what rage baiting was a thing. All of this changed after I took accountability and got clean after moving across the country, and that's a whole process I'm not going to get into right now, or this video will be way too long. Point being, the change began when I learned to simply name the emotion instead of just feeling a storm of negativity. And I would pause and identify it, like, this is frustration, or I feel like I'm being disrespected. And this simple act created a tiny space between the feeling and your reaction. And it's like that little window, and that gives you back the controls. I personally learned all of this in therapy and group sessions, and what do you know, it actually kind of works. Even if you aren't in a life crippling situation like I was, I still think therapy and having the right therapists and tools is like a complete game changer, and it can really improve the quality of your life when it's used effectively. And not everyone needs to go to a therapist. Even just having some close friends that truly understand you and don't co-sign your shit makes the world of a difference, and often can be just as effective if you ask me. I had friends who put up with my shit forever when I was still using, and I still value and hold on to those friendships dearly, and that's something you can't replace. Another underrated tool I learned was box breathing. It's super simple. You just inhale for 5 seconds, hold for 5, exhale for 5, hold again for 5. It's like a physical reset button for your nervous system, and it's very simple, but it works. Especially for someone like me who has a brain that doesn't stop running. I have ADHD and an addict brain on top of that, so it can be a pain in the ass to calm down at times. And when you manage your internal world, you stop being the victim of your own moods and start becoming the calm, solid man who can just handle whatever life throws at him. And not just that, just at a certain age, it's like, all right, it's time to start regulating your emotions if you haven't done that yet. There's no excuse after a certain point, regardless of your circumstances. Alright, so skill number 3. This is the one that quietly runs your life, and it's communication. It bounces right off what we were just talking about, and it's specifically handling the conversations that you would rather avoid. That's like you keep replaying an argument in your head or thinking of the perfect thing you should have said. And the skill is more about learning to solve problems with people and not win battles against them. We avoid these conversations, like asking for a raise or setting a boundary, fixing a conflict, because they feel like a fight. But avoiding a tough conversation doesn't make the problem disappear, it just lets the resentment grow in the dark, and that's not the route you want to go down. I used to think avoiding conflicts was keeping the peace, and in reality, I was teaching people that my needs didn't matter. Like, I had no middle ground back then. I either would try to keep the peace and say nothing, or I'd storm into conflict like I was being deployed onto Normandy or some shit. And the key is just to listen and understand, not just to respond. Like, you're way better off hearing what they're saying than filling up your brain with clever responses. And then, like, what I do is when you speak, use I statements. Instead of you always interrupt me, try saying something like, I feel like I can't get my point across when I'm interrupted. It pulls the other person onto your team instead of pushing them into a defensive corner, which is psychologically proven, by the way. And this skill is a muscle, and the more you use it, the stronger it gets, and the more respect you'll naturally command. And something important to mention is that I work full-time as a substance abuse counselor, so I've had the opportunity to practice proper communication and get really good at de-escalation, since it's something I deal with often in my line of work. And to simplify this, if you just listen and use I statements and keep your tone in check, never matching the other person's energy, especially when they're activated, you will grow into someone who can handle tough and uncomfortable situations without losing any self-respect or dignity. And this affects everything in your life, from how you talk to women, to coworkers, family, basically anyone. People will notice that shit, I promise you that. And last thing to understand is that some people simply do not have the emotional intelligence to handle these types of conversations. Even if you put this into practice, some will be harder to tame than others, and some will just flat out not listen to you or try to yell over you. And just know it's usually never your fault. That is their issue and not your responsibility. And if you can, I would really just stay clear of those people. They're extremely draining to be around, and that energy rubs off on you, and it will bleed into other areas of your life, which is what we're trying to avoid here ultimately. And look, if any of this is hitting home right now, if you've ever felt that gap between what school prepared you for and what life actually asks of you, do me a favor and hit the like button. It tells the algorithm that this is a conversation that actually matters, and it helps get this video out to other guys who might need to hear this. Alright, so let's get back to it. So this brings us to skill number 4, self-advocacy, which is basically communication in action. You can get an email or text asking you to work late, or a friend is asking you for a favor you don't have time for, and you find yourself saying yes when every part of you wants to say no. Self-advocacy is the ability to ask for what you want and protect your time without feeling guilty about it, and that's the key right there. The default path for most of us is just to be agreeable until you're burned out. The path we want to be on is to set boundaries so you can show up for the things that actually matter to you. And like, this is one of the most important skills one can have. You can save so much of your energy that can actually be put somewhere productive and not end up wasting years of your life on absolute bullshit that you never even cared about. And for years I thought being the reliable guy made me a good person. Like, I was getting aura or validation from it, and and it just made me tired and resentful, really. And in a way, it's kind of manipulative when you always say yes and conform to what everyone else wants because you don't really feel that way, but you act like you do. And the intention doesn't have to be bad, but it's still manipulative without us even realizing, because we're no longer being true to ourselves. And the big shift for me was realizing this and learning that no is a complete sentence. You do not owe anyone a long explanation, and I can't commit to that right now is all you need. And honestly, however they react will tell you where y'all stand with each other. And if someone throws a crybaby bitch fit over you saying no, first, that's not your homie, and second, that's a lack of emotional intelligence, and again, that's not your problem. And this is critical at work too. When fucking Jeffrey or whoever is asking you to stay late to cover their shifts and you're already burnt out or have plans, that's when it's vital that you say no if it's something you really don't want to do deep down. It's super hard at first, especially for me. I was a people pleaser for years, and some of my family members are the same way. And it took a lot of no's to not feel like I was guilt maxing myself anymore. And honestly, it's still a work in progress, and there's still certain situations where I feel the guilt, but it's gotten a lot easier because I've stood 10 toes on my boundaries. And another one that's hard to practice is knowing what your skills are worth in the market or at your job. I think it's super important to negotiate for it, especially if you're underpaid and not getting the recognition you deserve. But also, self-advocacy is just asking for help. That's not a weakness, and I hope we as men can get over that stupid ass belief, because asking for help is a sign that you are serious about your own growth. You stop waiting for someone to give you a chance and you really start creating your own. And personally, this was the hardest one for me to build, but if I didn't start saying no and asking for help, I never would have gotten clean and built the life I have today. And I sure as hell wouldn't be sitting here talking to y'all right now. So it's not easy, but it's very simple. And it's how you don't get walked all over in life and get cucked. Alright, the final skill ties them all together. This is the big one. This is the bread and butter, if you will, which is managing your time. Do you ever get to the end of the week and feel completely exhausted, but look back and have no idea what you actually accomplished? I've had weeks where I was busy, but I was not productive. Time management isn't about doing more things, it's about doing the right things. We all got the same 24 hours, but how you use them is what separates feeling stuck from feeling proud. And everything started to change for me when I started prioritizing the things that weren't necessarily urgent, but they were important. So for me, this was like going to the gym, learning that new skill, working on my budget, planning my next moves. These are the things that nobody else is going to do for you, so you have to be the one to schedule them. And time management is a skill that's gonna allow you to build the future you want for yourself, one effective day at a time, without feeling brain dead or retarded. I've realized that most people live in the urgent box, where it's like they're constantly putting out fires, and real progress happens in the not urgent but still important area. But of course, you still have to handle your urgent situations as usual. That's gonna happen to all of us. We can't control when that stuff comes up in our lives, but simply doing the things that no one else is gonna do for you, that moves the needle forward every day, and that's the number one best use of your time. We all know someone who has the shittiest time management. I had that friend who would always show up late to everything, or keep everyone waiting in the car while we waiting to pull up to a function or something. Like, that shit to me always seemed mad selfish and like inconsiderate, and it was always one of my biggest pet peeves. And they always seem to have chaos going on in their lives too, and everything just seems out of whack. That's the common denominator I've seen with people who have shitty time management. And everything I've yapped about so far can be given back. You can earn it back. This is the only one that you cannot get back, and that's why I think it's the most important. These are all very simple, but again, I don't feel like they're common knowledge anymore in today's world. It could be because of social media. We already know they don't teach it in school. Could be about a whole lot of things. I'm not here to discuss that in this video. Y'all can discuss that in the comments if you'd like. I'm more just giving the advice that has honestly saved my life, and I know it can help one of y'all. So there you have it. Everything we just discussed: financial literacy, emotional regulation, communication, self-advocacy, and time management. These are simple, playbooks for handling life as it comes. There's a lot more in here I didn't account for, and we would be here for hours if I broke all of it down, and honestly, it's a miracle if you made it this far, so I appreciate that. But here's the most important part: these skills are connected and play into each other. And when you're stressed about money, your emotions are simply a mess. When you cannot communicate, you cannot advocate for yourself. When your time is chaos, you cannot work on anything. But the reverse is also true. When one skill improves, the other gets easier and they build on each other. The old you will just react to life and basically just act like a passenger. The version of you with these skills is in the driver's seat. That's the difference. You're not just living life, you are actively building it. These aren't easy to put into practice, but they are very simple and they work. Doing nothing keeps you stuck right where you are, and in today's world and economy, we need every advantage we can get, you know? So I have a question for you. Look at these 5 skills. Which one is your weakest? And just put it down in the comments. You might have something to say that could change somebody's life. Seriously. I'm going to keep documenting my journey on here and keep giving y'all any helpful tips I learn along the way. So if you enjoyed this, subscribe and stick around. And as always, if you made it this far, I appreciate you. Peace out.